I was scrolling through my Facebook feed a few days back, and this image popped up. It was posted by a friend, and the discussion that was going on said, "Why can't Indian cities look like this?" One of the suggestions that was offered in those comments was that our cities probably need a little more planning. This sentiment is a frequently heard one. A lot of people believe that our cities look messy because they are badly planned or because they haven't been planned enough. Yet others believe that our cities are planned, but we Indians as a society are basically incapable of following rules and regulations, which is why our cities become messy. But before we think of what we need to do, we must first understand what it is that makes our cities what they are. So in today's presentation, I will share some stories and observations about roadside shrines. The idea is that these shrines can be a lens through which we can begin to make sense of Indian cities. Many of you may have seen these roadside shrines. As you drive across Ahmedabad or any other Indian city, one sees these structures in the middle of the road, on traffic islands, under trees, outside shopping complexes, buildings. They are everywhere. In Ahmedabad itself, there are thousands of such structures all over the city. So what exactly are these shrines? Who builds them? Who prays there? And when we all can clearly see that they are built in such odd locations, why don't urban authorities just get rid of them? The answers to these questions are very varied and also quite complicated. So let's begin with the first question, which is, how do these shrines emerge? In the research that I've been doing and the work done by a number of my students, we came across a number of reasons. So we documented stories where shrines came about on the death of an animal. So for instance, a snake or a monkey dies, and a shrine is built in that location by people who worship gods associated with these animals. We documented stories of shrines that came about as the result of a dream. So somebody is facing difficulties in their personal or professional lives. God comes in their dream and suggests to them that they should make a shrine in order to resolve their problems. We also documented instances where shrines came up in a more ad hoc manner. So for instance, many of us have photographs or idols of deities that we keep in our house, but we want to dispose them off. We no longer need them. But because we don't throw this sort of stuff into the rubbish, you either give it to somebody on the road or you leave it by the side of the road. Rather than getting thrown away, these photographs or idols get propped up against a wall or they get displayed on a tree. Before you know it, somebody begins to make offerings, somebody begins to light a lamp, a small platform gets built, and you have the beginnings of a roadside shrine. We also found instances of people who intentionally built such shrines in places such as empty plots of land or parking lots, simply to ensure that nobody else occupies that land, or to ensure that people don't throw rubbish there. Irrespective of how these shrines emerge, what happens over a period of time is that they attain a certain mythical status. Many of us have heard of miracles performed by various gods. As such stories spread, more and more people come to worship in these shrines, and we find that the community of worshippers associated with any shrine has become much larger than the original group of people or the individual who built the structure. What is also interesting to note about these shrines is their growth and presence in relation to the other changes taking place in the city. Those of you who are from Ahmedabad may be aware that the past 20 years, the city has undergone considerable change. Traffic has increased, the roads have widened, and we have a new public transport system, the BRTS, that has been put in place. In the course of these changes, the street side activities have seen a lot of transformation. So in many instances, the urban authorities have removed vendors, tea stalls, various small businesses. But what is interesting to note is that these roadside shrines rarely get removed. So what exactly is the difficulty in removing these structures? A recent newspaper article about 3 weeks back showed what the difficulty is. So there was this shrine, believed to be about 55 years old, located right in the middle of a very busy road. Over the past 2 years, the shrine had expanded and was causing serious traffic congestion. The municipality decided to demolish a part of the shrine. They didn't demolish the whole thing. But next morning, they faced severe public backlash. Members of the public blockaded the road with the debris from the demolition, and they raised a number of objections. The minor objections were that the authorities should have informed the temple before demolishing it, and the more major objections were that the demolition was fundamentally unfair and unnecessary. So once we recognize that these shrines are clearly a common part of the city, we also see that they are clearly a non-negotiable part of the city. What then does this tell us about the city itself? There are 3 points that I would like to raise here. The first point is that when people build these shrines, they clearly feel entitled to occupying public places like a footpath or a parking lot. When other people come to pray in these shrines, they further lend legitimacy to these structures as religious places. Even if people don't actually pray here, but simply accept the presence of the shrine by not protesting, or they accept inconveniences such as traffic congestion on account of these shrines, they inadvertently create a climate of support around these structures. The point here is that popular use, acceptance, and a lack of protest serve to naturalize the presence of these structures within the urban landscape. The second point to consider is about the development of these shrines in relation to the development of the city. So let me give you an example here. Many of us have come across quite nice roadside shrines built in front of shopping complexes or office complexes. What typically happens here is that the shrine would have existed prior to the development. But when an old building is demolished, the builders will typically not demolish the shrine. And as the new building comes up, people associated with the shrine use that opportunity to consolidate the shrine as well. So a new platform may get added, a new roof may get added, some marble finishes may get added, or even a grilled enclosure, which makes the shrine larger than what it originally was. What we are seeing is that as various parts of the city are getting developed, these shrines are getting a boost as well. A third point to consider is about the role of these shrines as important public institutions. These shrines are not just places where a small group of people come and pray twice a day. During large-scale festival events, these shrines have very large-scale celebrations. So even though they may be located by the side of the road, they will typically build a tent which covers a large part of the road. They may organize a series of ritual activities over a period of 9, 10, or 12 days. They may have entertainment programs, they will distribute food and sweets. These events are also visited by people from all over the city, and in the course of these events, these shrines collect a significant amount of money by way of donations. What we are seeing here is that the shrine, from being a small roadside structure, turns into this important social institution that is meshed within the cultural and the social life of the city. Once we recognize these complex relationships that tie the shrine to the life of the city, then we must also accept that we cannot see these as mere inconvenient obstructions. And we can also not expect that the municipality can simply remove it whenever it seems inconvenient. I'm not trying to justify these shrines. I'm not saying they are good or bad or unavoidable or inevitable. The point here is that the shrines clearly tell us that cities are made as much by buildings and parks and roads as they are by people, both individual and collective. Cities are made as much by rules and regulations and policies as they are by forces of religion, culture, politics, and the various concerns of a city's inhabitants. Let me use the metaphor of a board game to try and bring some of these ideas together. If we think of cities as board games, Just as a board game has a physical board on which a particular game is played, cities similarly have the physical environment within which the lives of its inhabitants are carried out. Just as a board game has rules, cities similarly have norms and regulations in accordance with which its various inhabitants go about their daily lives. But board games also have players. Not all these players are the same. Each of them play in their own different ways, but are essential to the game. Similarly, cities have various kinds of people who are all participant in the making of the city. The roadside shrine example tells us that there are the builders of the shrines, there are people who go and worship there are people like you and me who may neither build shrines nor worship there, but we encounter and navigate these shrines as we go about our daily lives. And there are the various urban authorities. Each one of these groups is complicit in the making of the Indian city. When we suggest that cities need more planning, we typically refer to the idea that the board on which the game is being played needs to be better designed. When we say that cities need more regulation, we may be referring to the rules of the game. But we need to bear in mind that any change must take into consideration the built environment, the authorities, but also citizens and various other people. Because, as we realize, Indian cities are best understood as games that are constantly in play. Thank you.